as an individual, and it's now personalized because it is only showing the buddies that are related to the trusted friend list that you have. So if you're running the full client, or the same time, in this instance, the same time information inside the portlet, you get your personal list of names. It's not anything generic. That doesn't go far enough, because what we're saying, and we've challenged IBM very early on, that we need to get to the point of having personalized and context-based buddy lists, for instance, and that's one area, and we'll see a couple examples. But what that means is, if I'm in a call center and I've got a trouble ticket sitting on my screen, I want to know a couple of things that I cannot pre-program. Right? I want to know, and I may be able to do this piece, I want to know who were the last few people who talked to this customer on the phone. Because they're going to say, I called last Tuesday, and by God, I talked to somebody and they promised me this was fixed. Right? So being able to see those names, have the awareness engine, pick up those names and put them in. Now, the trickier problem is analyzing the problem ticket itself. And there's now technology, and I'll show you an example in a moment. There's technology that will analyze in real time that content and then provide you a virtual list of names through, for instance, the instant messaging client of people who can help you solve that problem. They may not be people who had anything to do with this client before, but they're people who can connect to that kind of problem and help you work through it. And so we think that's the next level. Now, there's some prerequisites to that. All of this is built, and all of our, for the last 6 years now that I've been working at Giga/Forrester, has been on collaboration as the foundation for knowledge management. Right? There's all of this wonderful technology, repositories, knowledge management by a lot of places was, let's put everything in a repository, put a search engine on top of it, and thank you, we've done knowledge management now. Right? It does not connect people to the most important information resource, which are the people in the organization. Some people believe, and I think it's generally true, that about 80% of what an enterprise knows is in people's heads and is not ever written down by anybody. Most of the knowledge management conversations were around tacit versus explicit knowledge. Right? I look at tacit knowledge as things that will never be written down. Explicit knowledge is things that's written down. And we always forget implicit, which is what people try to do when they do knowledge management, is let's take that stuff that could be written down and get it written down and transfer implicit to explicit. The tacit stuff happens with collaboration. It's in the context of some interaction. You get a hold of somebody and say, gee, I've got this problem. Let's walk through it. You may not have thought about it the way that you are thinking about it in that moment as that person's talking to you. So you could never write it down in that way. So the collaborative process is extremely important. And we've talked a long time about using content as a trigger for a conversation. But the technology is allowing us to analyze content and present collaborative opportunities to people. So this is using things like categorization, pattern recognition, semantic analysis, etc. And we believe that a new middleware layer is going to develop that will touch content, pre-digest it in various ways, and we don't have a platform yet that has all of these features in it. We're tracking about 50 companies right now that are in this space. Everybody from Autonomy and Verity to, I believe, Stratify either was or is across the street as I was driving down the street here. And a number of other companies that are doing pieces of this. Most of it is academic research turned into a business. So Mike Lynch went to Cambridge University in England, did a PhD thesis, and turned his company, actually multiple companies using that PhD work, eventually into autonomy. And their technology is one of the leading ones for doing this, and they just bought Barrage this week. So they're now creating a larger platform which includes now audio and video storage and management along with their discovery technology. But they're creating to the user interface for this is the right content related to the work that you're doing, these are the right people you should be working with, and we see the technology already being picked up. So I'll do a little case study in a moment. This is Ford Learning Network, and I'll talk about them in more detail. But the idea is that we're picking up clues from the environment. And this is one of the tricky problems that still exists, but I think we can get around that early on. It is a little bit more explicit in terms of passing various parameters from a user interface back to the intelligent content services engine and having it return. You'll see this kind of loop happening in several of the diagrams that I have. What Ford was dealing with was they had employees in their enterprise university that would take tests. And those tests would identify skill gaps between what that role of person needed to know and what they knew. And then they would sit down with their manager, and they would go through these reports. And we've all had managers, so we know that our managers are very diligent, read the reports that they're handed, and always give us very good mentoring and coaching, right? Everybody's had that great experience with their managers. What they found out was managers, of course, were not doing this. They were not consistently working with people, mentoring them, and saying, here's your curriculum. So what they ended up doing was creating a network that online gave them these tests, built the same kinds of assessments. What they did with the supervisor was it allowed them to decide that it was the skills that they needed. And this is not absolutely essential to the solution, but it's the process step that continues. It's actually Ford's chart. And then the system is handed off to, this is an autonomy example, handed off to the autonomy engine, where it is then matched, those skill gaps as concepts are matched against the available content on the network. They're presented with courses, they're presented with news information, they're presented with other forms of data that are going to help shore up their skill deficiencies. And so what they ended up doing was moving from the education profile into the business side to finding suggested content. So when they log into the learning portal, it is no longer the experience of, look at all the courses I could take. There are 2,700 courses on how to deal with customers better. I don't know which one to take. Right? So I've now narrowed down, taken these assessments, figured out exactly what I need, and the system is matching content both from courseware and other forms and giving me a personalized portal view that is based on the information. Yes?
Do we have a metric that tells us that this is successful?
Yes. I don't recall off the top of my head. It was something in the $20 million range in terms of both assess the cost avoidance kinds of things, where people were not skilled enough in their jobs, and by taking these courses as kind of more just in time, they were more available, as well as the administrative costs related to trying to get people to sign up for courses, right? So it was the skill, the improved intellectual capital of the company. They believe they put a dollar value on as well, because these people were not taking courses before, and there was an increase, several thousand more hits and interactions than they were having before they put this in. BAE University at British Aerospace, or what used to be British Aerospace, I'm doing a case study on them as well. That's much deeper than that. I mean, we're actually going to go in and take a look at what they're doing, and they've also estimated, using similar technology, several million dollars, I should say, of savings and opportunities, right? So one of the things we'll talk about in a moment is this technology is not just about productivity and efficiency. I take the software companies to task when they say, Microsoft Office 2003 is going to make you more productive, as measured by what, right? But they also have the issue of that, Microsoft and IBM and AOL and Netscape and others have very big soapboxes that people listen to. And productivity, to me, is not the right crux of the problem. The current economic situation has led us to productivity equals efficiency equals cost savings. What it does not do is help us figure out how to make our business better, right? How to grow the top line versus saving money on the bottom line. And I think we're missing some of those opportunities. And that's really where this technology plays in, is looking at opportunity cost. And I think that's some of what they're experiencing with these universities, is if we can have a smarter workforce, and it's less expensive to get us there, and we're presenting people with opportunities in the context of the kind of work. The next implementation of Ford is actually going to be looking at and profiling, and there's some personnel and privacy issues involved in this as well. And I'll talk about those a little later, but to touch on them, their next implementation is going to start looking at what did you do in the last 6 weeks, right? It's going to build this ongoing time-based profile of your work and add that as a clue into the search engine so that when you go into the thing, it's not just what skills are you deficient at, because that's a very generic question. It's going to say what skills are you deficient at in the context of the work that you're doing over the last 6 weeks.
Is this their appraisal?
What's that?
Is this their appraisal?
No, this is a way of actually narrowing down the presentation of information even more.
Okay.
Right, so that when you go to the portal, it's not just, you have these deficiencies, because they take a test once a year. And so you get this whole list of things, and there's no priority. So it helps prioritize based on the work that you're doing, prioritizing the presentation of the courses.
It seems to me,
Yes.
the way, suppose from the client side, the request came, and you have data in databases.
Yes.
I was assuming like your platform you're proposing is somehow has like a metadatabase, which is going to store like an information, particular profile
Correct.
or whatever.
Correct.
And based on that thing, and based on the request came, you generate the query on the
Right.
fly, and then query the database, get the data back, right?
Correct.
I was curious, like if that's the situation, then wouldn't the results you'll be getting or the content systems you are building, like the syndication, based on like what type of databases or like the systems that the search engine is going to the platform is going to support.
Right.
So aren't you basically restricting? I mean, like, because think like this. For example, you have a BA WebLogic application server, and then you store that information in Oracle database, just for
Right.
the sake of argument, And then on the other hand, like they have their own portal server. You can get the data from that particular system.
Right.
And then assume you have like some other system which has like SQL server support, and then like it's like Microsoft, they build that particular portal on SharePoint.
Right,
So
right.
just for the sake of
Right,
argument,
right.
So you have that, and then like somewhere you have like SAP or like Salesforce automation, like from Civil kind of thing. Now I'm assuming all those are like basically your potential content,
Right.
data resources.
Correct.
And from your like like if you have like Autonomy or Stratifier, whatever the product
Right.
you have, like for the end users, you're profiling all that data.
Yep.
From there, like how can you? I mean, like unless the system which is in the middle is going to support all these systems, then you're restricting the data you get back, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things. One is that what we're seeing now is a lot of these systems are built for point solutions. So in the case of Ford, in the case of BAE, there are certain data sources, mostly unstructured content and courseware, that they point the engine at, because the business decision was made that, for instance, if they're running SAP, the likelihood of SAP having something that's going to increase somebody's skill base is pretty small, right? We will talk about other instances where it's much broader, right? Where it is information, because that's really the end game, right? It's not just unstructured content, it's also structured content. It may also be tools. I mean, I've had some conversations with these companies as UDDI matures, and I've got metadata about tools. Could these kinds of algorithms also identify web services, for instance, that are available to you, saying, you're trying to solve this kind of problem, here's people who can help you with it, here's data that can help you with it, and by the way, here's some tools that may be able to help you with it. There are data analysis tools, and here's the kind of data I know that I'm suggesting to you, so these tools may be able to analyze the data that you're being presented with. But yeah, I mean, it is an issue in terms of the broadness of that. But that's a very different issue than trying to, if I go back to the original premise, which is trying to anticipate what people are going to need moment to moment. You can do at a pretty broad swath the various repositories and pick up the context of the work, and it may actually redirect the repository search, right? So it may pick up from my environment, I'm trying to do this kind of work, and oh, I'm not doing a generic query. I'm doing project management stuff around this project, and I may go out to the project database. I may go out to various other sources and do that. So yeah, there are things ongoing in the background that we'll have to manage.